9 years. 9 years. You know, some people believe that things happen in 9-year cycles. In 9-year cycles. And I think it's so cool that we're sitting here on the precipice of a new cycle as we celebrate the end of this 9th year in this community together. So in doing some preparation for my talk this morning, I looked up what is the 9th anniversary traditional gift. You know, have you ever looked that up when someone's having an anniversary? And I found out for 9 years, it's pottery. Pottery. And so I thought that that was such an interesting symbol to explore spiritually this morning. Because one of the main ideas that our founder, Ernest Holmes, wanted the human race to understand is exactly how powerfully creative we are. He encouraged all of us to remember that we work with the same creative power that flung the stars into the sky, the same creative power that nature uses, the same creative ability that all sentient beings have is within us. Last week we began our discussion of the divine feminine and the sacred masculine energy that all of us have within us, and we explored that even further on Wednesday night, because it takes both of these elements within us to create, just as it requires those same feminine and masculine energies to create anything. There must be a part of us that chooses an idea to create, and a part of us that receives that idea and makes it happen. We all have a potter's mind, and we all have potter's hands. And we must have an understanding that there is an infinite supply of the creative medium, clay. Clay is the unformed substance, and it symbolizes just infinite possibilities available to us as we move through life. Clay is the life energy that just is. It's sort of like we're gifted with an unlimited supply of clay when we take our first breath. It's our birthright. No one receives more clay than anyone else, but we do receive conditioning once we get here among other human beings. We receive many, many life lessons about what is possible to make out of the clay of our lives. Our little potter's minds are carefully instructed in the process of creation by those around us. And it's not lost on me that we have 2 infants in the room right now. And you know what, this is really funny, because last week I said, we need babies. We need babies around us. And the fact that there are 2 in the room just makes my heart sing. But at any rate, our little potter's minds are carefully instructed in the process of creation by those around us. See, our parents and our teachers and our spiritual leaders and our friends and our neighbors and society itself gives us so many messages about what is possible to make out of the clay. We're taught many things, and then we begin to believe them. We're taught that only certain kinds of people can make certain kinds of pots out of their clay. We're taught that our gender limits the kinds of pots that we can throw. We're taught that where we are born, the type of skin we have, determines our freedom of choice in creating. We're taught that we're somehow lacking some element of deservedness, and that limits our choices. In other words, the clay is freely given, but our potter's minds are impacted by the messages it receives. See, some of us are taught that we're creative. We can make something wonderful out of our lives, and some of us are taught that we better play it safe. Some of us are taught that we only have one shot at the things that we create, so it better be perfect. And others of us are taught that if you make a choice and you aren't satisfied, just choose again. But we're all working with the same clay. See, here's the deal. Clay does not care what it becomes. It just simply waits for the potter to decide what to make of it. Clay just waits. And it can get a bit dried out from the waiting. right? When you don't pay attention to the clay, it gets kind of dried out. Then the juice kind of seems to evaporate out of the clay after long periods of neglect. But nonetheless, the clay waits. And once the potter turns its attention to the clay again and gets an idea, the potter can add the water of inspiration to the clay and begin to make it pliable and responsive again. It's how it works. So what's in your potter's mind? What's in your potter's mind? There is an impulsion in all of us that Ernest Holmes talks about to make our lives better. And I know that you have an idea right now about what you could make out of the clay of your life. You know, perhaps it's something little like a new article of clothing you want to have, or maybe you want to decorate your house a little bit differently. Or perhaps there's something big, like a new job, or a new relationship, or a place to live. Perhaps there's a whole new chapter that you want to create in your life. Big or small, I know there is something in your potter's mind. An idea, an inspiration, a hope, a dream, a goal, an intention. Call it whatever you will. There is something in your potter's mind. Now here's the tricky part. Is your divine feminine self ready to be pregnant with a new idea? Is she receptive to beginning the creative process yet again? Is she ready to collaborate with others and trust her intuition to be vulnerable and authentic? Is she ready to get her hands dirty at the potter's wheel? If not, what is stopping the process? I think what tends to stop the process of creating is fear. Perhaps we've created something before, but it didn't turn out the way we thought it would. Perhaps we took great risks and had expectations that things would work out easily and effortlessly, when the reality is that what we wanted required a lot of effort and discipline and time dedicated to the creative process. Perhaps we aborted a creation in the middle of it, and now we doubt our ability to stick with something all the way through. Whatever's happened, we get nervous. We get nervous or downright fearful about the creative process. But let's look at the pottery process kind of as a symbol of truth and about creativity. When the potter's mind has an idea and it picks up the clay, it makes it pliable with the water of ingenuity and inspiration, it's time to create. And so what happens? The potter begins to spin the clay. They get their hands really, really dirty. They sit for long periods of time working with the clay, adjusting the clay, pinching the clay, forming the idea they're holding in their mind. But guess what? If you've ever watched a potter, you know what? They seldom get it right the first time. Very often they've diligently worked with a form, sometimes for hours. And then they end up realizing something's a little off balance, and they collapse the almost formed structure, don't they? You ever watched a potter spin and then all of a sudden it just gets out of whack and they just smush it? And the most important thing happens next. Resilience. If the potter is going to walk away from the creative spinning wheel with a new form, they must pick up the smushed clay and put it back together and start again. They have to add some additional water, they have to soften the creative medium once again, and then the spinning starts again. And a new potter must learn to have confidence in their ability to start again and not call themselves a failure in the face of a smashed form. And remember, the clay doesn't care. The clay is happy to be wet again and being used again to create something new. It responds to the potter the first time, it'll respond to the potter the second time, and it will respond to the potter the 344th time. It's the potter's clay to use. It's your life energy to use. It simply waits for you to try again to open yourself up to a new inspiration and pick up the clay again. If you're still breathing, you have clay waiting for you. So what's in your potter's mind? Let me speak for myself. When I was a little girl, I knew very little about what life was going to happen, what was going to happen. Maybe I don't even know any more now than I knew then. But as I went through my life experiences, it became clear that speaking and leadership and teaching and coaching were just kind of skills that came pretty naturally to me. And yes, I was given lots of limiting messages about what I could create with my clay as I went through my life. I was a girl, so my choices were limited. I was a lesbian, so that made it even worse. I was not rich, so my choices were limited. I didn't go to a fancy college, so my choices were limited. I'm sure you get the idea. I need not give the list. But somewhere in my potter's mind, I received the idea, some people consider it a calling, to become a minister and a spiritual teacher. And I had a spark of an idea to live a life centered in the teaching of this philosophy. So I began to spin the potter's wheel again in the area of my career. I began to take every experience that I had ever had, and I began to infuse it into the clay. I worked in a prison for a while. I served patients in a mental hospital. I helped creative kids. I coached executives and employees all over the country. Public speaking and training, anything I did, I was folding it into this clay, anything I had done. And as I spun the clay, I took class after class after class, and I never really knew what was going to be at the end of the tunnel, but I just trusted that the clay would eventually form something. I dedicated myself to helping people see things from a spiritual perspective in any life circumstance. That's how I practiced. Whoever was in front of me, I kept spinning my clay. I kept trusting the process. And when I finally smashed the form of my corporate career, I wet that dried out clay with a new water of inspiration, and I stepped into ministerial service. Even as I continued my seminary studies, I started serving. I formed ministries at the center in Atlanta. I assumed that I would be taking those ministries to the kiln and they were just going to be a part of my life forever. But after a few years, those two got smushed back into the lump of clay, and then I moved to Florida. And I began spinning my clay again with my ministerial work here in this community. And Friday night was the culmination of this ordination process. And I was ceremoniously asked to put my ministerial clay pot into the kiln, because no matter where I serve, my life is as a minister. So we all work with our clay to create forms on the career level of our lives, but we also work with clay in our personal lives. And when we see a relationship that we've been spinning the clay on for a very long time get smushed back down into the formless, we can feel like such a failure. Many of you witnessed such a smushing in my life last year as I released my 13-year marriage and allowed that form to pass back into the unformed clay of possibility. And with that form also got smashed many of my lifelong relationships. And now my hands are at the potter's wheel again in this area of my life as I faithfully work again to create something beautiful for myself. And career and relationships are not the only pots we spin. We spin pots of health, we spin pots of well-being, we spin pots of friendship, we spin pots of financial experiences. We are constantly in the creative process in one area of our life or another, always spinning creatively in every moment. And I share my story not because it's special in any way, but because it is not special. I am just like you. I'm just like you. I have shelves of beautiful pots I have spun in my life. I finished them. They're all fired and painted and beautiful. And they're on display. But I also have shards of broken pots all over my studio that they no longer serve me, but they were cherished at some point along the way. But the most important thing is I'm still sitting at the potter's wheel. I still sit and wait for intuition to be sparked into a new creative idea. My hands are still wet and dirty and ready to create out of the clay. And guess what? I still have to be encouraged by others when I feel disheartened, when I have to smush things down. And the most important thing to me right now is that I have all of you around me in this community, sitting at your own potter's wheels. I hear you when you encourage me to keep spinning, and I hope you hear me when I encourage you to spin too, to keep creating. Keep spinning, beloved. Keep creating. Keep adding water. Keep smashing forms and trying again. Never give up. Never doubt that you have enough clay. Your work as a potter is never, ever done. 9 years ago, Reverend Allen had in his potter's mind an idea for a spiritual community just like this in Tampa. And we are here together today because this idea was conceived in his potter's mind and heart. And Spirit's gifts always come to us in the forms of ideas. And this was his idea, and it was an idea shared by several other people, some we already recognized in the service earlier. And if you were here Friday night, you heard some of the history of our community. If you've been around here for more than a few years, you know that sometimes it felt like the clay was being spun into one form for a while, and then it seemed to get smashed back down when the ministers changed, or the location changed, as people came and went. It seemed to be formless again. But the most beautiful thing is, Reverend Allen wasn't the only potter committed to this idea called CSL Tampa Bay. When two or more are gathered in my name, meaning an idea, a name, when two or more are gathered around an idea, there is tremendous creative power. And this particular creation has many, many committed potters with their hands of ownership all over the wheel, forming the form. And we're not done with our creation yet, are we? We're here this morning, going into our 10th year. We each have our hands on the clay this morning, making this beautiful, loving community pottery together. Perhaps you're one of the people that are pumping the pedals of the spinning wheel. Perhaps you have your prayerful hands of consciousness, holding the spiritual truth for everyone involved. Or maybe you're holding a paintbrush and you're just ready to make things colorful when the time is exactly right. Maybe you're encouraging others to belong and get their hands dirty too. Or maybe you're preparing the kiln and the fire of abundance hot enough to solidify this piece of pottery for generations of Tampa Bay families to be inspired into the future. The song we sung is "Stand Up With Me, and I Will Stand Up With You." Together, we will see each other through. That's what we've been doing for 9 years. That's what we'll be doing for years to come, because this is a divine idea in the mind of God. This is a shared piece of gorgeous, strong pottery that has withstood the test of time and is getting stronger by the minute because of you. You are a part of something bigger than yourself. Your presence here in this creative process is a divine appointment in your life. Your soul called you forth in this community this morning, or perhaps a very long time ago. Regardless, you're here. We are here. We need each other. I'm going to ask Penelope and Cheryl to come back up. Hezekiah Walker's song, "I Need You to Survive," speaks to my soul this morning, and I trust it will speak to yours. Here are some of the lyrics. It says, "I need you. You need me. We are all a part of God's body. Stand with me. Agree with me," meaning stand for this idea with me. "It's God's will that every need be supplied. You are important to me. I need you to survive. I won't harm you with words from my mouth. I pray for you. You pray for me. I love you. I need you to survive." May we sing these words to each other for the next 9 years. Happy anniversary. I love you.